So I'm going to hand the floor to the panelists who will introduce themselves, if you don't mind.
Let's get started.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Dale Freed. I was a physics PhD student here a long time ago, and I remember sitting up in the back up there. This mic doesn't work. And I called it the ejection seats because if it got boring, I could always just leave. So anyway, if somebody leaves, I completely understand. I worked at Lincoln Lab for about 10 years, and then I spun out a company from there commercializing technology that we've been developing there and licensing it through the TLO. And yeah, that's about what my experience is. So, yeah. Just be happy to try to answer any questions about my path to getting to where I am, if that could be helpful. And afterward, if you have any questions or anything, please come on down.
Hi, I'm Maureen Stancic-Boyce. I did a PhD here as well and an MBA over at Sloan. Went and took that experience to Bain & Company for a while, so worked with strategy. Came back to MIT to teach. I actually love the teaching and love the research, but the postdoc life is tough. I congratulate all of you who do that. So I went back out to the private sector, to a company called Mainspring, which was acquired by IBM. I was an associate partner at IBM in their strategy department. And then another MIT MBA and myself started a company, Ignition Ventures, and we helped people like yourselves who had an idea about companies that we work for. Took some time off to have kids, lived in Hong Kong for 5 years, and came back, started a very small VC fund. But what I do here at MIT now is I'm a mentor at Sandbox, and I've mentored about 20 plus teams each term. So if you know about Sandbox, if you don't know about Sandbox, you should, because it does give money to MIT students, any MIT student, to start up their company. And I'm actually working there now, helping them on their marketing, because not enough people know about it. And just so you know, I met Layla, was one of my first mentees through that program, and you'll hear how successful she's been.
Hi everyone, I am Furkan, co-founder of FullText. I was here at MIT. Actually, I graduated from Sloan, getting my MBA degree as a Sloan Fellow in 2016. And before that, I was in Turkey, working for Turkish Telecom, and focusing on pricing, marketing analytics, and strategy for a while. After that, I came to Sloan, and after that, I started working at Sprint Corporation in Kansas City. I spent some time in Midwest, and I really enjoyed that. It was fun. And recently, actually, at the end of last year, I founded FullText with my friends, part from Turkey, part from here, and working on that at the moment. Our focus is facilitating the scientific publishing process in medicine. So we are trying to help researchers to focus more on their research in medical science. So.
Hi, I'm Layla. I'm founder and CEO at ReviveMed. So I got my PhD not too long ago from MIT Biological Engineering Department. I just left MIT last year to be full-time CEO of my company. So the company that we developed, the technology we developed during my PhD here, we are right now negotiating full licensing agreement from MIT TLO. The fund started from the option agreement and moving it forward from there. So it was not too long ago that I was sitting that side, taking a bunch of classes here, and it's just so exciting to be back here and be happy to answer any questions.
Cool. So I am Reynaldo Rey. I'm not a PhD, so I am a 5 times entrepreneur. Was born and raised in Brazil, moved to the US, lived in Mexico, lived in China, lived in many places around the world. And 2 of my companies were sold, 3 failed, very bigly, like our president said. And I am also an entrepreneur in residence here at MIT, so I help anyone interested in starting a company or interested in entrepreneurship at the Marketing Trust Center and also at the Legado Center, which is focused on emerging countries. The Marketing Trust Center is for everyone else. So if find me out, and we're happy to help you guys. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sasha Huang. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aqua Fresco. So we are a wastewater treatment company and actually sort of a spin-off from MIT Department of Material Science prototype competition. So I graduated with a PhD in Material Science Department in 2016. And basically our team went through a couple of different competitions, both inside and outside MIT. For example, MIT 100K, Clean Tech Open, and also Mass Challenge. So basically we have a lot of competition experience as well as some sort of information on hardware, startup, tech environment overall here. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This session will be mostly in Q&A. So I will begin with a few questions, and I will not stop asking questions until I see someone raising his or her hand or someone standing behind those two mics. So yeah, please, if you have questions, either raise your hand or stand behind the mics. So here's my first question to the panelists. Starting one's own business can be very exciting but scary, especially for people who have just graduated. Some of you have worked in industry for a couple of years before starting your business, while others may have jumped straight into the business after graduation. How would you advise a graduating student or postdoc who is choosing between a high-paying job offer and an exciting business idea?
Yeah, so, well, I'm not the PhD in the panel, so I will give my perspective. So, starting a business is very hard, as you may know. I would advise you guys to start the entrepreneurial life if you're really passionate about what you want to solve, the problem you're following, or if you have that thing inside you that says, oh, I need to do that. Because it's not a rational decision. Actually, most of the time it's an emotional decision. If you see the numbers, the statistics, I mean, 95% of startups fail. So if you want to make a rational decision, don't do it. If you want to make an emotional decision, go for it. You know that it will be very hard, but it's really, really cool after suffering along the way. When you look back and you see that you can create something yourself and that you can make a difference in the lives of thousands or millions of people.
So I could answer it a bit differently. So it's definitely really hard, and so you definitely need to have lots of passion for it. But I also try to look at it in a different mindset. So what you define as a success mindset and what you define as a failure mindset. So the statistic may show okay, there's a really small chance that you succeed in your business. But I would say if you start a company and even if your company will not make it to an exit, it's still a success for you as a personal, as a growth in your career. Because the learning experience you will have in 1 year is just tremendous. So there's so many different aspects that you will learn that you would never learn just getting a high-paid job. And even if you decide after 2 years that, okay, I'm done with entrepreneurship, my startup doesn't work, you may actually end up with a higher position level in those big companies that you may work at. So I would say that definitely look at it how passionate you are, because it's hard, and you have to really have passion for it to keep continue going after it, but also look at a different mindset of success and try to just learn as much as possible and just enjoy the whole process, because it's just the most exciting thing that you could do. I would say I've never worked so hard in my life, but I've never enjoyed working that much either. So it doesn't feel like working. You're excited the next day to just get up early and start everything. So,
I totally agree with the points that you mentioned so far. On top of that, I will share another statistic. Maybe it's not going to be very encouraging too. A recent paper, actually coming from MIT Sloan, Professor and Pierre Zolai and Daniel Kim, PhD students, saying that the most successful startups, founders of most successful startups, has a median age of 45. So it is not very encouraging. But one of the main takeaways from that study is experience on that particular industry that you will basically work on, trying to solve the problems of before trying to solve particular problems in a particular industry. It's better you have some sort of experience in that industry. That is the best indicator for the success of a startup. So I'm not saying wait for the age of 45 to start the company, but having some experience on the subject that you will tackle is very important, and this study really proves that. So that is what I would say about starting a company. It's giving that decision between starting a company and going on with a high-paying job is basically, if you are confident that you have the experience, and of course you should have the passion too, then go with that. Otherwise, take your time to gather more information, gather more knowledge about the industry and the business dynamics, just other than the idea itself. My 2 cents on this.
And to add to all of those comments, which are great, if you're a student, if you're an MIT student, not yet a postdoc, you should look into the sandbox. As much experience as you can get before you leave, before you have to make that decision, is wonderful. The reason MIT Sandbox Fund is called Sandbox is because they want to encourage all the students to come and try, potentially fail, and that's okay. There's another statistic that some of the most successful entrepreneurs and startups have pivoted 2 or 3 times. So you have one idea, doesn't work out, you try something slightly different, doesn't work out, you try something radically different, and then it works out. Sandbox was created so that people can learn the basics of starting a company while they're still in school, while they still have a safety net below them. If you're a postdoc, if you can partner with someone who brings someone onto your team who is currently a student, you qualify. You don't have to only, your team can, as long as there's one member of your team who's a current student, it works. The other thing I want to recommend is, I assume that all of you have really deep technical background. Please recognize that starting a business, there's a necessity for business as well. Just because you have the best technology doesn't mean it's going to be a successful business. Actually, there was one of our clients at Ignition Ventures was a professor here. He had the best underwater technology for a certain business. We did some research. Everyone in the industry was losing business. We said, great technology, but keep your day job. So you do need to analyze your technology from a business point of view. And I would expect that no one here is a proficient at every single area, so get a team. Get a team. And if you're not ready to hire somebody or bring on a partner, get advice. If you're already a postdoc and you can't find someone to be a student, and you can't get Sandbox advice, there's plenty of other groups at MIT or around MIT. Share your idea and get advice. You want to make sure there's no business if you don't have a customer to buy. So make sure you know who your customer might be.
When you posed the question, I said take the job. And I think I say that for a couple of reasons. One is, I had a good technical education, but I didn't know much about business either, and I didn't know much about a particular industry, but I also didn't know about working with people. I learned a lot of that in graduate school, but I learned a whole lot more in the first 15 years of my career. And a lot of personal development happened, which makes it so that at least today I'm better. Not great, but I'm a lot better than I was. And I think that's really important, to put a team together and to believe in something together, to work together on something, to get people motivated, to understand what's going to move your customer across the line. That stuff is really critical. And for me, at least, it took many years working for other people and kind of noticing things in the way those organizations functioned that I said, yeah, that's really good, or no, I don't really want to duplicate that. It turned out to be extremely helpful. The other thing that for me, in my particular case, by waiting longer, I was able to start this company. We've been about 3.5 years going, so it's not super long, but it's long enough that we've been actually making some money. I started it without any VC funding, and I did that because of all the contacts that I had through the years of work, and in particular with government customers and that sort of thing. So, it was all kind of very fortunate, and it worked out nicely, or I should say it is working out nicely, but that's because of the contacts and the knowledge of that industry that I was able to get through those years on someone else's nickel.
I just want to add to that. A lot of people think getting VC funding is the be-all, end-all. It's not, because then somebody owns part of your company and somebody else gets the decision and driving your company. If you can bootstrap, it's desirable if you can. And not everyone can, and that's fine too. But VC is not the be-all, end-all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I actually agree with Del. So like, you might be surprising because I actually started my startup right after grad school, but basically what I found is that to build those connections and to build those trust among different parties, or to approach those more senior people inside certain organizations takes a lot of time. And like, basically you need to sort of having someone, either you are lucky enough to have someone guide you through the process, or you need to put a lot of effort to figure that out. So I think to some extent, unless there's some certain urgency in terms of the things you want to do, for example, you want to do an AI chip and everyone is doing it right now and you think you have a particularly good idea that can't wait anymore, you should definitely start doing it. But then if you think, well, I sort of have this idea, but then it sort of can wait for a while because the market is not mature at that moment or something like that, maybe it's better you have some experience in some corporate job and then sort of navigate through the process and also making necessary connections that could help you success in the field.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, well, I go. Oh, there you go. Yes.
So how much is their bio industry experience important here? Say you're grad school, just graduated, or just finished your postdoc, and you don't have any industry experience. How does it matter?
So I guess the question, just to kind of repeat the question, is how much does industry experience matter in the biotech industry?
Not only
In any industry or biotech?
in any industry.
Any industry.
Well, you don't have a business if you don't have a customer. So you gotta go figure out who your customers are. You gotta figure out what they really need, what they need but they don't know that they need yet. What are all the other options of how to solve their problem? And you don't tend to get this on the field, but you don't tend to get that when you're specialized in one particular. You're getting a PhD in one particular little area. You may not necessarily understand the wider context of the problem that people are trying to solve. So I don't know if that answers the question. That's my perspective on it.
So as you can see, there are many ways to achieve success. Success comes in many shapes and forms, so choose the best option for you guys. In my experience, which is more consumer internet, software, not biotech, nowadays, in the last 5 years, experience doesn't matter at all, because the industry is changing very, very rapidly. So sometimes someone that's fresh and young and out of school, or even at school, they can learn the new ways of doing something better than people that know too much about the subject. So it really depends. Of course, their experience is welcome, but in at least my industry, I myself was disrupted 2 or 3 times because I knew too much. So someone that's coming from the outside might see that industry very differently from someone that knows a lot. And being naive is very important, because if you know too much, you don't do it.
Do you mean technically, or all the experience of how to run a business?
I think everything can be learned nowadays. There is no excuse. So if you are hungry to learn, you can learn anything. Elon Musk learned how to make rockets, right? Or electric cars. So, that's more and more common because the tools available to start companies now are much more widespread, and the cost to start a company are much lower than before. So, anyone really can start a software company. I don't know much about biotech. I think it's very different, right? But at least in the consumer internet, it doesn't matter much anymore, which a lot of people say, oh my goodness, what I'm doing here, studying all these years. But that's what in my experience, I found out.
So 5 year experience in Google, for example, would not make a...
that's different because 5 years in Google gave you a lot of networking, as he said, and gave a lot of, let's say, experience on how to manage and to deal with people. That does not change much. But I would say business experience or technical experience, I mean, the top companies in the world right now were started by people that had no previous experience that field before. You know, Google or Facebook or any company, I mean, Spotify. So I think everything is possible, but each person has a different way to do it.
I could even add to that, so we're in biotech pharma industry, you know, it's very conservative, so lots of people have lots of experiences. But I would say it depends how much you try to gain experience, because I have like hired people with 15 years experience in pharma. Me being in the market, like doing the research and market research in 2 years, my network and the people I know is like 10 times higher than that person. It's just like you should get out there, just talk to people and network. It doesn't matter if you're just working for these big companies and just doing your science and never get out there, never network, never try to understand what everyone is doing. You may just get more technical experience, which is awesome, like it's even what you want to do, but your network is still small, you don't know how the industry works. But if you are 1 year like entrepreneur, go to all these events, really go out there and talk with people and network, and you really see the dynamic of this industry, you make so much more connection than just being like 5 years and just doing your science and technology. So you could really expedite that gaining experience just by really getting out there and just talk to people and talk to your customers and really know what their needs are and stay connected with more people.
The answer to your first question, and probably this question as well, is what's your risk tolerance? If you have a low risk tolerance, take the paying job. If you can handle the risk tolerance and you have another source of income, that's kind of important. If you can feed yourself without getting money or without getting customers, then take the chance. It's probably what it comes down to. But I also want to say, if you have a technology that, there's two things I would recommend. That one, you get lots of advice, talk, have other people outside yourself and your tighter circle assess the technology to get other people's idea of how viable this is and how big a business this could be. So get advice early and often. And then this, and on that point, the founder of HubSpot, he gave a talk, I guess it was last year at Delta V, so maybe 2 years ago now, year and a half. And his advice was, people make the mistake of not talking because they feel that somebody will steal their idea. The probability of that happening is so much smaller, well, the P1 is much, much, much smaller than P2, which is the probability that you'll never get going if you don't talk to people. So, so talk early and often. And then the other thing is, if you have a really great idea, but you don't know if you can take it to become a business, you can license it out to other companies. I mean, so many of these big companies now have venture arms within themselves because they realize exactly what you said, that the entrepreneurship and the growth and the new ideas are coming from people outside the company. Often when you have that soft job, that high-paying job, you get comfortable and those companies can't take as many risks. I mean, if you're a public company, you cannot take the same risks as a startup can take. So, hey, they're happy to let all of us take risks, and then when you've proven yourself or gotten to a certain point, they'll buy you. But you know what? 2 years of effort and $20 million, acquisition isn't such a bad deal. So, I encourage you to think through that, too. That's an opportunity.
Just to add to a point, in my experience, it's easier for technical people to learn business than for business people to learn physics or chemistry or biology or programming. So the majority of companies today on tech, I mean, again, not biotech, I don't know much about biotech, but they are run by technical people or technically savvy people. Like Steve Jobs, he was not a technical person per se in terms of education, but he was savvy enough to understand technology very well and to talk to engineers and designers. So I think if you are a technical person, which means that most of you are, I think, you can learn business faster than the opposite.
I think it sort of comes down like, the things for being successful as an entrepreneur or a successful business is that you need to first know who your customers are and then know like know who are the right connections. And so if you can make those during your time in school, that's perfect. You probably don't need to have certain industrial experience to make the company successful. But like if you're in like your interest is in the industry, like you need to be an insider to know certain information. For example, how much is the customer going to be willing to pay for this product, and you won't know as an outsider that maybe you need a couple of years of experience to figure out, okay, is this something worth doing or is it not?
One quick point on this, on top of what has been discussed so far on this question is, it also depends on how novel that the process or the idea that you are bringing into the industry. Maybe having the industry experience wouldn't help you a lot deploying the idea. I mean, it all depends on what the idea is and how you think that you can implement the idea within the industry for that particular issue. So.
Hello? Is this working?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think this is working.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry that we're having technical issues here. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes?
So, very early on, when you're bringing on a new team member, are there certain traits or good process of thinking and when you're assessing this person, and what do you look for in a very potential co-founder?
So I guess the question is, what are some of the characteristics that you should be looking into when you vet potential co-founders for your startups?
First and foremost, someone who's complementary to your skills. You don't want a clone, because you want someone who can take the other part of the business or the other part of the technology that you can't do. So look for complementary skills. I would not hire somebody or take someone on right away, but bring them on part-time, see how they work out, or, and especially if you're thinking of offering someone a portion of the business, make sure it vests over time. It doesn't come right away. So typically a 4-year vesting schedule is appropriate, so you have time to figure them out. I'm sure I'm going to think of some other things, so I'll be back.
So the first cause of failure for startups is actually co-founders fighting, according to lawyers in Silicon Valley I spoke with. And the vesting is a very good idea. Vesting is basically you don't own your shares before 4 years. So I mean, each month you get 1/48 of whatever you have at the company. So that's, for me, it's the best idea to do, because if someone leaves with 50% of the company, in 6 months you are done. No investors, no one will care about that company anymore. You become uninvestable. The second thing that's very important in a co-founder, I think, values, because you will go on ups and downs. Whatever your values are, not making a judgment of what your values are, I think they should be very, very compatible, because you see the best and the worst of people in a startup, the emotional roller coaster. So make sure that the values are compatible. Third thing is, she said very well, I mean, it's like a marriage, so date before you marry, so knowing a co-founder before, it's great. But you shouldn't only like your co-founder, but respect your co-founder. Because when you are in the lows, at the bottom, you should trust that person, their judgment, or the technical judgment, their business judgment, whatever it is. And I think respecting that co-founder is more important than liking him or her.
So that's a big question. So basically, I think one thing that is important to find a good co-founder is actually you can find someone who commit to the same vision as you do, and who's really responsible to his or her role in the process. and some people might show enthusiastic in certain project, but like those people doesn't necessarily means they can carry out, they don't have the tenacity to go forward. So I think tenacity and responsibility and commitment to a vision or a goal is definitely important traits that you look for a co-founder. So for example, like my company is probably not a really good like example for like finding good co-founders. So basically, long story short, we have 3 co-founders and then we started from school. And then basically we have like, you know, when you start a project in school, like you have the safety net, you can sort of fall at any time. Like basically you can say, oh, I'm really busy and like it's not a real business and you still, like graduate student, you still live on your stipend. So like things sort of less stressful. So basically a lot of traits you can't really see during those times. And what happened in our team is that, so 2 of us graduate earlier and 1 is like a year later. And basically we will start to demand, like one co-founder say, hey, since you're part-time, you should still commit certain time, maybe like 20 hours per week for the project and basically to keep moving the business forward. But what happened was that the co-founder was like, oh, I'm really busy with my papers, etc. And eventually there was a commitment issue coming up. So definitely finding someone who is committed, and people all have agendas. So like the other thing you should prepare is that you should sort of know what are the potential obstacles that might come up if your co-founder change his or her mind, and then you need to be prepared for it. So for example, our team originally, I wasn't like the most outgoing person in our team, so I wasn't actually the perfect CEO material. But then I figured out there might be a chance that back at that time, our CEO might left the project because of certain issues. And it did happen. So like, because I can foresee that process might happen, I actually talked to him like, hey, since I know you might have some personal agenda, and I know you really come into the project this time, but we don't know if a year later if you're going to leave or not. So you should step down from the CEO and rather being like the face of the company. So definitely take precaution and look for someone with commitment and long-term tenacity.
I'll just jump in real quick. Someone recommended to me a book, The Founder's Dilemma, which I would highly recommend. It's not saying you should do this or you should do that. It's more saying don't be schizophrenic. You know, if you try to do both, you know, approaches of to get rich and to be in control, and you try to do both, you're not going to be able to do either one well. So maybe you were kind of referring to this, but there's different sets of values, and you kind of need to know what yours are. The other thing is make a founder's agreement. Somebody recommended that to me. It was through the venture mentoring service, which is, by the way, plug out to those guys.
Yes.
Those are very helpful team over there.
And they do serve alumni and postdocs.
Right. If you can spell MIT, they'll help you. It seems like very generous. Anyway, make a founder's agreement. And so I started doing that, and it helped me clarify a little bit how I was thinking about things and to put on paper what I thought was fair. And I ended up founding by myself because a couple of the other people that I was talking with, in the process of going through that founder's agreement, we realized that our assumptions going in were a little different. And the other 2 folks, one of them I interact with on a weekly basis through kind of shared business stuff, and we get along great. The other guy has gone on to do great stuff. In another, he is in a small company, he's done great stuff. And I wish him well, there's no hard feelings. If we had not had that founder's agreement, we would have just jumped in and then had these misunderstandings, it wouldn't have been pretty.
Yeah, I definitely want to second, third, and fourth that sentiment. As early as possible, have the discussion, but have an agreement, and you don't have to get a lawyer involved. Just put down on paper what your agreement is, and even to the point of who owns what shares. I think it's rare that a single founder does well. I don't know if you know, but Delta V here. So hats off to you. But Delta V doesn't even accept a team unless there's 2 people, and the reason for that is you might be brilliant up here, but until you can explain it to somebody else, to a customer, to a VC, to whoever, it's not going to work. So the first step is being able to explain it to a potential co-founder. A lot of what I help teams with is just communicating what they assume, what they already are thinking, getting it down on paper so they put a line in the sand so people can react to it. And it's going to change. It's going to change several times, and it should. But having a co-founder will make you discuss things. Ideally, there's not only one co-founder, but there's an odd number. So when you have decisions, there's someone to break the tie, or it's not 50-50 as far as ownership. And if you do only have one other co-founder and it's 50-50, you can have the scientific advisory board ASAP, and they help you break the ties. That's really important. Or BMS mentor, or sandbox mentor, or
Sandbox.
all of the above.
I think there's a question over there.
For a fresh graduate student coming in with an entrepreneurial mindset into graduate school, how do you think I should steer my PhD project in order to come out from grad school with a very high potential to spin off with the company? And sometimes like PhD thesis or projects are totally not as applicable to go for a spin-off, but you might be doing like electrical engineering work and would it end up that you might have an idea that's related to your major but not related to your PhD project, and you can still spin off from that idea and be credible enough that you have enough technical expertise or have very good experience in that technology, and like help some
Let me just rephrase the question. So the question is, how do entrepreneurially minded students design their PhD so that they have the potential of starting their own businesses upon graduation?
Yes, based on the PhD course.
Yes.
So I could really relate to this question because when I started, I wanted to start a company, I was thinking, who could make a company out of the research? So it sounds too basic and just publish it and we cannot make a business out of it. So fortunately at MIT there's lots of resources to actually help you guys to evaluate that. Like one of them is Sandbox, one of the other programs was iTeam, innovation team that we use at MIT, which basically you're creating a solution during your PhD and you want to find a problem to solve it with it. And the problem that you find, and the first problem you want to find, that's how you define your business. You want to find a problem that will add lots of value to the market, and also it doesn't require too much of an effort, like investment more on it. Like you don't need to do another 10 years of research to make it that. So I would definitely recommend you just really get involved to lots of programs that exist at MIT and think how you could actually design your PhD to answer some of those problems. And one of the best things that we realized was, for me, we've developed this machine learning algorithm that could just get some input data, generate some outputs, and really didn't know how to use this or create value. So what we initially started doing was just go to talk to the people in the industry. And when you're a PhD student, you have lots of leverage because when you even email lots of people in the industry and just say, hey, you're a PhD student at MIT, just use your MIT email and then say, we are doing this technology, we're doing this research, we want to see what you guys think about this. Just this, nothing more. And you just go talk to these people and I was like, well, we may think that you could use your PhD in this area that we saw lots of need. And then you do 50 of those interviews, and at the end you will realize wow, this is such a big market need that maybe our research could help that. And then if you are in the middle of your PhD, then you could actually talk to your peer. I was like, oh, we conducted all these interviews, we see all this potential, maybe we just do this experiment this way and define our project to actually answer this problem. So I think we're a really good way of just thinking about it early on and just try to just talk to people in the industry as a student and just doing your market research and see what the best way is and develop it further from there.
Yeah, so you talked about exactly what you did, and it's customer research basically, right? They didn't even know they were a customer. You didn't even know they were a customer. So you're exploring the market, you're doing market research, and the areas that most people are interested in having a solution. When you hear a problem and then you can be part of the solution, that can be a business.
Yeah, I have a question that's related to the previous question. On this one, while Dale touched upon a very sensitive point that the person or the founder should not be schizophrenic, Whereas if we look at the other spectrum, we have a very good example of Sasha, where she said that she did not think, until she was like the CEO of her whole company. So I was trying to actually like think upon whether there is any middle ground. Can you actually hire your own CEO? Because we are also at a situation, we tried to come up with some startups, they failed miserably. We are now at a position where me and my co-founder, we do not have enough time, but we do have a lot of ideas, we have a lot of connections. But we are thinking of like hiring a CEO. Then the point comes that we have to actually shell out the salary from our own pocket. And that follows the second question. When is it the right decision for you to pull out and then say, I'm done?
Yep, that's a great question. I had no idea.
So I think the question is, when is a good time to hire a CEO and or make a decision to pull out, and how do you make those decisions, right?
Yeah. So let me talk about that because I did exactly that. So when I moved to the US, I developed a gaming device, gaming console for emerging countries, and I raised money from Qualcomm. I didn't know how to start a company in the US, and the investor told me, well, maybe we need adult supervision, which is code for hiring a CEO. And I interviewed CEOs myself. I was the sole founder of this company, and I interviewed the CEO. So how did it go? So it's very hard because professional CEOs are great. I think when you reach certain size, like Google did with Eric Schmidt and the two founders, which actually were PhDs, Sergey and Larry. But in the beginning, it's very hard because the founder is much more committed emotionally. And I mean, it's everything in, You don't care about anything else, only about your startup. The CEO is being paid to do that. So I found out, although my CEO was a great guy at this company, the vision and the passion, when I say passion, it's more vision, long-term commitment, and a lot of other stuff, but he was not as much with skin in the game as I was, And at some point in time, that became detrimental for the company. We were not big enough to have hired a professional CEO. So my experience, I would hire a professional CEO, or even better, a professional COO, because I think that's what most founders need. We are very good with ideas, with selling, motivating people, vision, hiring, but sometimes we do not pay attention to the operations, right? Which is why Steve Jobs had Tim Cook and why Mark Zuckerberg had Sheryl on Facebook. So I think, I wouldn't recommend you hiring a CEO before the company gets product market fit and becomes large enough to require a professional CEO. That's my experience.
A new trend that's happening is actually getting a coach. So you take the VMS mentor, the Sandbox mentor, whatever, and put it on steroids. So don't hire the CEO right away. Get a semi-retired professional who knows your industry, who's done something similar, who's done a startup, and give them some, advisory shares. Maybe they work 3 hours a day in your company. Fill the gap that needs to be filled, but don't hire until you need to hire. And I really like the idea of, hiring your COO before your CEO, because then you'll have to report to your CEO, right? Your COO will be, your lateral will be your partner, and that you still have a lot more control over that, especially since I would assume you're going to have a lot more equity still. So your decisions will count just as much as his or hers. So look for the coach who's been in the industry, and there's just so many more retired people, semi-retired people who still are interested and want to help, and they get excited, just like the companies that are too big to be entrepreneurial and take a lot of risks. There's a lot of people who are looking to help smaller companies, want to be entrepreneurial, have that business experience, can give the adult supervision, but you don't have to hire them. So hiring is a marriage. It's a big marriage.
It's very difficult to fire a CEO.
Exactly. It's messier than most divorces.
I'll second that, and it's interesting you use that term coach. I mean, that's exactly what I'm doing, actually, but I never thought of it as a coach. I have someone that I knew from a previous company, he was the CFO there, and so I brought him on as kind of as a CFO, and he has the adult supervision. I mean, he knows about how you do contracts, how you do marketing, business to business, all that sort of stuff. It's very helpful. And yeah, older people, they want to have some excitement too.
Yeah.
Actually, I think this mic is working now. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I have a question. So, in addition to doing your research during your PhD or your respective program, what are some of the other things that you participated to develop the kind of skills that you need to have a business upon graduation?
Yeah, so I was part of lots of programs because all of them at MIT, so anything existing, I think we participated.
As you most started.
Yeah, it's true. So you want to really leverage the ecosystem here, which is one of the most important things, honestly, to succeed. So when I was doing my PhD, I think really in the middle, I started taking lots of MIT Sloan classes. So as being like an MIT registered student, you could literally take any classes at MIT. So I think that was honestly super helpful. So the first class I took was Bill Allen class 24 Steps Entrepreneurship. And that was really helpful for me to actually know what entrepreneurship means, what that means to make a company. This was even before when I wanted to do anything with my PhD. And just being when I was doing my PhD, I realized how much I don't know about the MIT Entrepreneurship Center and resources. So just being through that class and just interacting with MBA students, I learned through so many other resources that I could use. So those ones are very helpful. If you're taking some classes, there's lots of MIT IAP. I think they have lots of good classes actually. So one of them is happened here actually. I took a class. It's nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship. It's a really good class. So definitely, and they're really short term. So during January, that's the time to take lots of classes. Negotiation class at MIT Sloan, they have a short version of it in IAP. Start MIT now. It's on IAP. So it's 2 weeks of workshops. Sandbox is awesome. Definitely you've met the most important mentors. They even stay mentor you even after Sandbox is over. So. And definitely those initial funding that you guys get is really encouraging because when you're a PhD student, you don't have really much money. So even incorporating your company, paying a few $100, it sounds a lot, but so having those, a small amount of money is really encouraging you. MIT 100K is another awesome one because if you get really inspired, just getting to some stage, you feel like it's the achievement and excitement and encouragement keep you guys going. They give you, for example, even free lawyers, during that time, so they help you. They have really good law firms that they mentor you for, some of those legal advices that otherwise would be so expensive to get. Yeah.
There's actually something called the MIT Innovation Initiative, and that exists just to catalog all the entrepreneurial resources here at MIT. So there's 60 classes. There's a minor in innovation and entrepreneurship, and then there's 30-something different groups that help with innovation at MIT. So I would recommend you go to the MIT Innovation Initiative, just Google it, and it lists everything, and you can see which ones are applicable. Some are applicable, ideas competition is applicable to things for social impact. VMS is really anybody. Especially alumni. There's some that are just for postdocs. So anyway, just go there and see which ones. I'm sure there's going to be multiple things that you can find relevant and that you can apply to.
So I definitely think Sloan classes and all that Marketing Trust Center is also a good one, and VMS and different competition actually. So there are certain prize money you can first good thing is the prize money actually can cover your incorporation costs, and there are certain grants you can write. For example, in clean test space, there are Massachusetts Clean Energy Center you can apply with, and also I think another good aspect about going through different competitions and all those proposal drafting is actually you can sort of get a initial feedback on how people think about your business. So if it's a good idea, is it a viable idea, or there is something you're missing there. So like during those processes, you sort of refine your business plan and like learn like how you should develop a business plan. But I think one caveat is actually, so MIT is a really encouraging environment. So basically, once you throw an idea, there will definitely, some people say, cheering for you, this is a great idea, you should definitely pursue it. But one caveat is that since like MIT is such a unique environment, you should be really careful when you are doing your market evaluation if it's really that positive or is overrated. So in that way, when you step out to the real world, you will sort of know, like, sometimes like an idea is really popular in school, doesn't really mean it can successfully be a business. It's a good sign, for sure. It's definitely a good sign. But then you still need to evaluate rationally to see if it's a good idea or not. And a lot of competition polish your pitch scale, etc. But you still need to focus on like spending real effort in doing market research to know your pricing point and to know like what the product specs your customer are really looking for.
And adding on top of that, I mean, I think MIT is a bubble, and the real world is much more difficult than what you find inside MIT. So don't take, I mean, the success in competitions or is that what you say on your pitch as a success in the real world. The real world is much more unforgiving.
Question?
Yes.
So for somebody with a technical background, what would be the best way to meet potential co-founders from business background?
Take classes.
At MIT.
Yeah, take some business classes.
Yeah, I form lots of, like, when you take this MBA classes, you could form lots of, you could form a team there. And that was actually, for me, was when we started initially, like, I formed a team with MBA student and you worked during the class project. So you could actually test out if it's actually a good fit, how you guys work together, and you could continue from there too.
And the other thing, if you are looking for more senior people in particular industry, definitely leverage resources in VMS or like other like more of like a coaching organization. So usually they would know someone who are looking for something new to do and they have certain level of experience you're looking for. So I think if you're looking for people with industrial experience and to help you with a business side, not just fresh from school or something, definitely look into those areas.
One advice I would give is look for people outside of work, outside of school, when they are behaving like they are in real life. Because when you are at work or at school, sometimes people put some persona, right? And they don't show what they really are. And I found out that a lot of people found co-founders like running or at the gym or parties, you know, sounds crazy, but that's when you find people behaving like they really are. And then you can evaluate that without, of course, telling the person and engage in a conversation. Sometimes, I mean, that happens very, very, very often.
Okay, well, in lieu of the current question and the previous question about skill development during PhD or postdoc, join the graduate student council. It's a great way to develop your leadership and your leadership and communication skill. Is also a great way to meet people. I think a couple of years ago, the president of GSC met one of the co-founders through people that he met at one of the GSC meetings. So, shameless plug. I think there's a question there.
Yeah, I have a question about the exit strategy. Is that something that you should do from day one, or something that can come along?
So I guess the question there is, should people think about how to leave their business the same day that they decide to start?
You can have an idea about it. Do not put it in your pitch deck. Don't put it in your pitch deck. Maybe put it in the appendix, the last page of your appendix. You know, you can have an idea, but if someone's going to invest in you, or you know, a customer's going to buy your product, they don't want to know that you're ready to walk out the door. They want to know that you're committed. So you can think about it, and you might get asked that question, but don't leave with it.
I guess the reason why I ask is because if you work in a startup and you have a product that you have some emotional connection to, and then industry is starting to ask for acquiring the company, for instance. I guess how do you evaluate your company and in terms of wanting to give it up or not?
So you already have a request to purchase your company, is that what you're saying?
Kind of. Yeah.
Okay, that's different, right? So you didn't lead with it, someone else led with it. And so in that case, it's fine to talk about it. And what your question is, how do you value the company?
I guess it's something we haven't discussed before in terms of an exit strategy. It's something that might come before in terms of connection to the industry. Is that something you recommend to do early on when you start a company already?
I mean, valuing a company is like valuing a house. It's kind of what the market will bear.
Yeah.
So don't just talk to one person. Don't just talk to one potential acquirer and get lots of advice from people who have valued companies. So whether it's VCs or mentors or serial entrepreneurs, or I would recommend, it's one of a kind. So it's what the market will bear.
Thank you.
So the less you want to have an exit strategy or sell a company, the more evaluation will be. So investors love when people are totally committed to their companies they don't want to sell. So I mean, I think that's the interesting part. You know, it's you have more leverage when you do not want to sell or not think about selling, because then it's when people want to buy you.
I want to add, so I believe in the commitment part. You have to show the commitment, but investors are always thinking, how am I going to get my money out? So is someone else going to buy the company? Is someone else going to invest and they can get some of their money out? It's a 5 to 10 year plan. If you're talking about the 1 year plan or the 6 month plan, that's too short of a commitment. But again, don't lead with it. Show the commitment. You're in for 5, maybe 10 years, and if you have that potential to monetize their investment for a VC, they like that. And they might not want you to be thinking about it. They might be very happy to think about it themselves, and they know someone who could acquire. So don't put it on your head to think about that.
Yeah, everybody's got an angle, right? So you got to think about, what do you want? What kind of a life do you want to live for the next 10 years? Because if you sell your company, you're not going to just tell it, they're not going to write you a check and you're going to go down to the bank, right? You're going to be stuck at least 3 years working for somebody else. You just gave them your beautiful baby, and they're doing something with it that you hate. And you're like, what the heck, why am I here? Right? But you're stuck, because if you don't work for those 3 years and give it your all and meet your milestones, you get nothing. So anyway, not that I'm bitter.
And I love that analogy. I do consider it your baby, and you're looking for the first daycare provider, the first nanny who's going to help you, right? It's who's going to help you support that growth. Someone who can trust with your offspring. And then as you grow and it gets bigger, then more and more people become involved in your child's life. And by the time they're a teenager, they don't really want to, you have very little control of them, and when they're adult, you have no control.
I think something I want to add, so when we were doing our investor pitch and want to do our fundraising, I think something that helps is to tell investors what are the options are as an exit. So when I was doing pitching, I was like, these are the different options. So in 5 years, financial projection, we could either someone going to buy us, and then you could also say what are the options are, what are the companies will be actually interested in buying you up. But the other option would be also for example, IPO. So that's a very different what you take that, but just having the different options laid out, then you say, okay, this is the way that I could get my money back. But you're not saying that that's going to be exactly what you're doing, but these are the options going to happen at the end of the strategy.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I have a question. So what are some of the most, well, and this question has been addressed, so if you don't like this question, we can move to the next. Well, in a way, so what are some of the most challenging and also most rewarding aspects of your respective entrepreneurial pursuits?
Wow, that's a big one. So I think the best aspect of being an entrepreneur is having freedom. So if you like freedom, become an entrepreneur, because you can do whatever you want. You are responsible for your own destiny. So that is something that I really enjoy on being an entrepreneur. The most challenging is something that people don't talk a lot about, is emotional distress. You know, sometimes it's very, very hard. Nobody wants to help you. Nobody understands you. It's very lonely. And if you don't take care, you might burn out. And I did it twice in the last 20 years. And it's not a nice feeling or sensation, you know. So take care with that. Do know that you're not invincible, and that this is a big problem, because if you burn out, I mean, who is going to run the company? And you lose a lot in terms of competitive advantage. So I would take a lot of care with your mental health. I mean, to be super honest with you, there is just idea that you see on TechCrunch and other sites that entrepreneurs are super happy, super, you know, billionaires. They're doing a lot of great things, but you know, even Elon Musk says that entrepreneurship is like chewing glass. You know, most of the time it's very unpleasant and very stressful. So you need to equip yourself emotionally to be able to take care of your mental health. It's a really serious issue, and it's not very much talked about in many circles.
So being an entrepreneur, basically you are sort of addressing a solution to a problem you don't. You're addressing like a problem that people don't really have a solution with. So basically that part of figuring out how to do that is really rewarding. So you set up certain milestones, you achieve those goals. I think those are definitely the best part of the job. And the worst part of the job, I won't say worst, but basically there are a lot of uncertainties. So where you get funding, where you get a partnership, and will you need to fire someone like in the early stage, or will you like basically can form a business and close the door just overnight or something. So those uncertainties can be really stressful. And I think if you're a person sort of like will freak out during those process, probably that's not a good sign of being an entrepreneur. But definitely like the part solving problem and like doing things people never done before, that's really rewarding.
Yeah, definitely agreeing with what has been said. So it's definitely a roller coaster ride. So the highs are high, really high. So you really enjoy it when everything's really good. You see that you could really change the world. You could see the direct impact of your work. So it's very rewarding. But I think the hardest part, like when you are in the lows, like it gets really lows. And the hardest part is like work really hard when you're in your lows. Because you have to still get up and do your job and still have the same energy while everything is not going well. So I think for me that was the hardest part, like to still believe in yourself and be having a resilience when things are not going well. Because it's easy to work hard when things are going well and you're excited.
Yeah, just one quick comment. Winston Churchill said once, when you are going through hell, keep going. You know, that's the advice I got when I was in my lowest low.
I totally agree with what has been said so far, but I want to second the opinion about freedom, but it comes with a price actually. I mean, people just go and some people just go out and become an entrepreneur, just not to work from 9 to 5, but they start working 9 to 9, including the weekends, and it becomes it requires really hard work. And freedom, yes, but it comes with a price. And most important part is I think you meet lots of people, new people, and helping you on your journey. You learn from them, and that learning experience is really stimulating in terms of learning, and you kind of continue to see different views these different perspectives on the subject that you are working on, and it expands your horizon in many cases. So that feeling is also really great. So otherwise, you would have that experience in your 9-to-5 job as well, but if you combine that experience and learning from people with that freedom, and it gives you real pleasure on learning and expanding your horizon.
I think the key part of the question that I can offer some advice on is how to get through the lows, and that's why it is often a great thing to have a co-founder or co-founders, other people to get you through the lows, the people to talk to. And then the other thing is the mentors or the advisory board, right? So surround yourself with people who can get advice, who have a different perspective, who are not in the thick of it with you and can pull you out of it when you're in it. And just get some cheerleaders around you. Okay, don't stick yourself in the lab or just the technology. So surround, and do it when you're in the highs. Don't wait until you're in the lows, right? Because when you're in the low, if you're looking for your cheerleader, your mentors, and your advisors, they're not going to want to join then. You won't be the best salesperson. So do it when you're still on the high and get those people to surround you.
I'll just echo what's already been said, especially about the mental health. It is a problem, and I think people who tend to be company founders, there's more of a correlation with people with like addictive type of mentalities, that it's like, really, I'm really into the adrenaline rush, right? And there's cost to that. And I'll just say I've spent my share of time sitting in my chair wondering, what the heck am I doing?
Any other questions? Well, we have about 10 minutes left, and I could let you go earlier, but the pizzas are not here yet. So I was just told that the pizzas can come at any minute. So in the meantime, I will just entertain the panelists with one last question. So students and postdocs are often loaded with research and sometimes classes, and oftentimes demanding advisors. How would you advise students and postdocs to balance their research and their classwork with exploring non-academic routes?
I think one of the things was I realized first of all one of the skills you have to develop is time management. So that's one of the first things that you have to realize. There's lots of things that you waste time on, so you're just being very careful of how you spend your time, prioritize your task. What's the most important thing that would add value to your career and the future, and just really reduce those unnecessary things that you're spending time with it. So you're just being more mindful of how you're spending your time at. And then it's just, again, when you have the excitement and I guess the passion, that's also drive you. So I always feel like I work harder. You have to definitely work harder. It just cannot be just being lazy and being able to do everything. So it definitely requires hard work. But then when you really enjoy something, it doesn't feel like work. So I spend lots of my hours doing different things. I'm going to talk to people, but I just enjoy it so much it didn't feel like work. So I think that passion helps a lot to get through the workload.
I think this question sort of speaks to your personality, sort of if you're a good fit for an entrepreneur or not. So basically, being an entrepreneur, you need to have certain curiosity to everything, because in a startup environment, you wear different hats. One day you can be pitching to investor, one day you can be in lab, working on solving certain problem, and one day you can be in front of a computer figuring out certain coding issues. So all those things, you need to be willing to learn it, and you don't need to really love it, love all of it, but you need to be able to like it and know you can do it. So once you are able to do that, you sort of view this thing as a fun thing to do. Time management definitely important, but then when you change your mentality, not thinking about some work you need to complete, it starts to become fun. And then that's basically how you manage your academic performance as well as your exploration in the startup community.
Any other questions? Well, so I ran out of questions on my sheets. I was just told that the pizza delivery is, I think they are 5 minutes out. So in the meantime, you guys can feel free to hang around in this room while we wait for the food to arrive, which I guess is the most important part of the panel.
Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you to the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to come and speak to the students, and thank you all for attending this panel. I hope you find the conversations engaging and useful to your respective pursuits. And remember that we have some brochures for the MIT SOLVE program that I introduced earlier, so feel free to take some of that. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and when the food arrives, please do not bring food to this room. And happy networking.